Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Modern Market, where every day we discuss everything to do with the modern market. That is the crypto market, the NFT market, and how to hopefully make some or a lot of money on the internet. Load up for discussion today. We have Trump's media group denying rumors that they are planning to raise $3 billion to buy crypto. Everyone seems to want to just buy Bitcoin and raise money to do that, but they are denying those rumors. Coinbase faces a class action lawsuit filed by stockholders arguing disclosure of recent data breaches were late and caused shareholder harm. And also, in more degenerate news, Hyperliquid trader James Wynn sees $80 million P&L reduced to $13 million. He seems to have stopped trading for now. We'll also be talking about the general market, what's going on, crypto, NFTs, and any other interesting ideas we are thinking about at the moment. I'm delighted to say we've got Legendary in the co-host seat, got Rahim in the co-host seat, and we have Stats Punk 9059 with us today. Cannot wait to get into it. But just a reminder, friends, before we do, nothing that we say here is financial advice, unfortunately, and it's not legal advice either, given that we'll be talking about the law a bit. Please do your own research, exercise caution, etc., and exercise your own judgment. There we go. Legendary. It's Tuesday. It's the 27th of May. How you doing? How you feeling?
I'm doing quite well. Excited for the full house today. Kind of like that we have transitioned from only having one full house a week to having multiple shows with four of us in the host and co-host seats. It's always fun like that.
Yeah, I like it. And today it's so full that we have to be rotating right towards the end of the show. You know, as I've said to people before, we're trying to do more of these dial-in style editions where a few times a week we'll invite people who we think are super interesting, want to have a host a conversation with. Today, I put out the tweet yesterday. We've got Wardaddy coming on, pretty epic trader and kind of watcher, observer of metas changing. He nailed the rotation from Blast to Hyperliquid, I think, and now he's building out on Hyperliquid with one of the most significant protocols to come called Kineetiq, which is going to be doing liquid staking on Hyperliquid. So super interested to have that conversation later towards the end of the show. We'll be going a little bit longer. So excited for that. Stats, welcome back. How you been? What's on your mind? How are things your side?
I'm good. I was in New York for a few days, which was a lot of fun for the Solana conference, as well as just connecting with the Memeland team. Wardaddy actually was my colleague at Proof. The two of us were the research team at Proof. RIP. But yeah, so I got a lot of love for Wardaddy. I worked with that guy for a year and liked him more by the day.
It's very fun when, like, I think the longer you stay in the industry, right, there's just more and more people who kind of pop up a little bit later. You see how their trajectory moves forward. Quick question on Solana. It's called Solana Accelerate, right? How are things there in New York? What was the vibe on the ground? I always hear excellent reviews about how things are going, like at all Solana events. What was your kind of read?
Yeah, it was definitely a well done event for sure. Yeah, they got a lot of nice people in there. I mean, the last one I went to was like the Binance event in Dubai, and that is not an event I love. So I think, like, in comparison to this, it's just a better done event. Like, you feel better in the venue, a bit more motion. You know, I never love conferences. I think they combine a lot of things into like one big room, which is just kind of an awkward situation a lot of the time. But yeah, I mean, interesting speakers. I think people, you know, obviously, you know, the markets are bouncing back. You know, we're not at 270 Solana like we were, you know, a few months ago, but the markets are bouncing back. I think, you know, people there were certainly talking about a rotation from ETH into Solana in terms of mind share and in terms of kind of what, you know, what's going to be relevant going forward. So that was certain. I mean, as someone who owns more ETH than Solana, I can't say I love to hear it, but you know, we can all be nimble, you know, so that was certainly something that was something I was hearing. You know, a couple people there, one of the companies that spoke talked about, you know, was a Solana holding company that VanEck owned, or that VanEck interviewed, not owned, that VanEck interviewed. So that's trading at like a 5x premium to NAV. And it was kind of funny hearing the guy try to explain why that makes sense. You know, he probably
were you not having it?
Yeah, I was having none of it, but I don't even think VanEck was having it. I don't even think the guy was having it. Like, it was just like, you know, the audience wasn't laughing or anything like that, but I think it's one of those interviews we'll look back on at one point and be like, yeah, that was a
joke. Love it. Well, I'm glad we've like articulated our position fully and entirely on the show.
I mean, yeah, it's 5 a.m. here. I don't hold back. Woke up at 4:50, so
that's the advantage. Get people in there early. You haven't got the full consciousness to keep it in.
I'm also on a 1 week coffee hiatus, so you're getting the unfiltered, uncoffee. Just this is what we got.
Love it. Good stuff. Rahim, check in with you, man. How's things your side? You've been hitting the trenches again, hitting it quite hard, right? Doing quite nicely.
GM, everybody. It's so funny that you said that. Yesterday, Ledge put out his Curtis stats, and he was like, "Oh, this is like the best sleep I've had in like forever." And I was like, if I was wearing a ring, it'd probably be like 6 or something, because I've had the worst sleeping schedule. Like recently, I've been like sleeping like 4 hours a night, and I've been taking like an hour nap during the day. That's just like, I'm busy with work. There's so much happening in the space, but I'm excited. It's fun. It's good. Risk is on. So, we play the game.
Back to game playing, I do think the sleep schedule thing is a reasonable indicator of like just how we're feeling the market, right? And Legendary having a lot of sleep at the moment. I'm not sure what that indicating. It's just maybe he's been too successful recently until he's working his way back into the risk parameters. Right, look, let's get into it. We've got a lot of stuff to discuss today, and as I said, for people who've just tuned in, really excited about having Wardaddy on later in the show. He's building Kineetiq, which is going to be one of the more significant protocols on Hyperliquid. He's going to be sharing his Hyperliquid thesis and what he thinks about it now that it has moved up so much. Of course, it might have been maybe easier to say that it's good now, but he'll be sharing his thesis from beforehand and its continued value prop. So we'll get into all of that in a bit. Let's start with the price action as usual to get you up to speed with everything that's happening in the space, starting with the majors. Bitcoin is rock solid at $109,000. That's up 4% in the week. ETH is up 3% to 2.6K. That's up 5% on the week. XRP is flat-ish around $2.30. BNB is flat around $6.80. Solana is flat-ish around $176, but that's also up 5% on the week. Just checking in with our other kind of alt majors. Hyperliquid is down a couple of percent at $37, but it's up 40% in the last week. So that is obviously the big mover out of those coins that we've been speaking about a lot. And Sui, our other one, flat around $3.50, down 7% on the week. They obviously experienced some of the difficulties last week with their hack. I think they're working through that, obviously, and it's ultimately fine, but a little bit down maybe on that. Everything else seems to be green in comparison. Getting into the meme coin side of things, we have Doge is up 1%, Pepe is up 1%, Bartcoin is flat. Not huge activity here, to be honest. Pengu's down 1%. Everything's like plus or minus 1%. If I have to be exceptionally generic here, nothing really to write home about, in my opinion. 1% up or down here and there. Getting into the main headlines today, we've got Trump's media group denying the dumb writers quote at the Financial Times, suggesting they had plans to raise $3 billion to buy crypto. I don't know if it can be that dumb. Like, they've tried to do a lot of other things in crypto. So we'll see what the sources are. Ryan's going to explain what the story was there. Coinbase faces class action lawsuit filed by stockholders arguing disclosure of recent data breach was late and caused shareholder harm. I'll just touch on some of those details. And then finally, huge Hyperliquid trader James Wynn sees an $80 million P&L reduced to $13 million as they just keep leveraging when they're trying to trade Bitcoin. So all of those trades are taking place on Hyperliquid, though. Considered to be pretty good marketing for Hyperliquid at the moment. Some notable price action. Huma Finance came out at 630 mil FDV after its airdrop to the Kaito ecosystem. Thought that was quite high based on just like all protocols in general. I didn't necessarily know that they were super prominent or well known, but I thought that was kind of a high FDV to come out at. And they've obviously been participating in this Kaito Yappa board, and those people have been kind of seeing their name crop up from there. So that caught my attention. Virtuals is up another 7% in the AI ecosystem, up to $2.30. PancakeSwap on BNB, kind of out of the blue, up 17% today. I don't know why that is, around to $1 billion FDV. And as I said, Hype's down 3% to 37, but up 40% on the week. Legendary, anything we need to know on the NFT side before we catch up with everything else?
Yeah, you mentioned one of the things in the notable sales part already. It's the Kaito Genesis NFTs up 10% on the day. that probably is to do with both the Kaito token itself being up, and also, as you had alluded to, the Huma Finance airdrop, 4% of that went to Kaito ecosystem holders, that is Kaito stakers and NFT holders. And you also made another post about the fact that a similar thing is to be expected for Infinex as well. So probably with the attention around the airdrop, that got a bit of a run up as well. Other than that, there's not too much to say on the NFT major side of things, mostly mirroring what you said from the meme coin side of things, up or down 1%, but not too many big movers. So nothing to get into right now.
The only additional one I would point out would be this Mega ETH mint. This is not a Mega ETH mint. It's not like an official Mega ETH mint.
Get it up.
But this one kind of caught attention today, probably over the last few days, realistically. I think it minted very, very cheaply. I found out it minted a few days ago, completely missed it, 0.03 ETH. Mint not so long ago, and it's run up to around 0.25 now. The thesis being, I understand, so I'm just repeating what other people told me. I did buy in when I saw it this morning, but the idea being it's like a community-driven bunny mint. They look kind of cool, and drawing a comparison maybe with the Hypios, which minted on Base and then kind of migrated over to Hyperliquid when Hyperliquid was live. So this mint took place on mainnet, and I guess the thesis is there's not many ways to get exposure to Mega ETH right now, right? Like the Fluffles, which are the NFT which you could mint as part of your kind of community round. You can't trade, so you can't trade those. And then all the testnet activity, they've kind of been quite confidently saying that this is not gonna, you don't need to farm our testnet to get to win, to make any money. So I don't know, it's kind of like a play, I think, from that perspective. So that saw some activity. That's that. Getting to the rest of the roundup, strategy bought another 427 mil of Bitcoin at 106K. This was quite disturbing, actually. Solana founder Raj Gokal, KYC details was doxed on Instagram. Really, really concerning. Maybe that was attached to the Coinbase breach not so long ago. Maybe it was something else, but just really concerning that people's private details are kind of hitting the internet in that way. Michael Saylor criticizes proof of reserves on security grounds. That was something he said in a recent talk. Axiom trading bots generated more than 100 mil in revenue in the first 4 months of launch. French company The Blockchain Group completes $63 million of convertible bond issue to buy more Bitcoin. The Dubai Land Department unveiled the first real estate tokenization platform on XRP. Rahim, I think you said you've got something to share there. And then finally, just on the crypto social side, Skate provided invite codes accessible in your Kaito Earn dashboard. The crypto casino Yeet, which Legendary, I think, has been having some fun on recently. Maybe you can speak to that. Announced their Kaito Yap leaderboard, and over $600,000 worth of patron kind of synthetic tokens have been distributed to the top 500 Yap runners. That's by the Infinex protocol, who have rewarded their Yappers quite significantly, I think. So that is the roundup there. Before we get into the main conversations today, which we'll get to in a bit, what's kind of catching our attention here? Maybe we'll come to Legendary first, into stats, and then Rahim, I know you have something on the Dubai details.
Unsurprisingly, I'm going to pick Yeet. It is another online casino there to farm, and ICO Beast has also been speaking about that. I like my usual way of approaching that by seeking out the game with the smallest house edge at the same time with the lowest amount of variance, lowest volatility, so it just can get some volume through that. I think it's massively underfarmed because with a couple 100,000 of volume, you will be easily in the top 100. And I know a couple 100,000 sounds a lot, but ultimately it just means incurring a loss of 1.5K or so to make it in the top 70, top 80. If you go with a very boring strategy and they actually don't go for the high variance slot games. And yeah, it's a farm I've been enjoying. I did well on Shuffle. I think this could do pretty well in a similar fashion.
When's TGE?
No clue.
And what type of game are you playing?
Always on the originals, always the limbo for me.
I love the limbo. I'm scared. I don't know what that is, but we'll get out there.
We'll actually have Mando on the show on Thursday, so we'll be talking Yeet on Thursday. Any other questions people have, let us know, because I think people are definitely participating, and they're doing a good job so far. Stats, what about you? What's catching your attention? Is it something from the snapshot, something outside the snapshot? What's catching your attention at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, from the snapshot, like that, the Solana, yeah, docs is an interesting word because I think we often associate it with people who are not known at all, but people knew who Raj Gokul was.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, basically the details where they posted photos of him kind of with his driver's license and passport and all his personal information, and then said you should have given us the $4 million. Like that's just not fun. So that kind of, it feels like that's a little bit of a theme now, maybe just because there are a couple like terrorist actions happening in France with these guys getting their fingers chopped off and stuff, just like more stuff of people kind of, I don't know. Yeah, I've always been a big advocate. I shouldn't say big advocate, but I personally think like that there's less risk to being open about your identity than all four of us are, and it probably hasn't led to tons and tons of problems, relatively speaking, but never like to see that. I was surprised this Coinbase news got any attention at all, just because every single public company has hundreds of class action suits against them. That's just like maybe not hundreds, but it's like it used to be that if you went to finance.yahoo, the first headline for every single company was a class action suit against them, because there's just a lawyer group that just does this nonstop whenever a stock goes down. Interestingly, it's not even on Coinbase's top headlines right now anymore, because I think like Coinbase probably made it. I think these news portals have probably made a concerted effort to not publish them, just because. But if you look up class action lawsuit in any public company, you'll like Google will give you a bunch of them. So I was a little surprised that made news yet, but I think that was like a Walter Bloomberg headline, and that guy like just posts random shit. So
yeah,
those jumped out at me. I'm also like, I'm always intrigued now that, I think again, Bitcoin rallying on the back of like a risk on day. Bitcoin rallies sometimes on risk off days. It just feels like kind of one of the most solid performing assets out there right now, as people can kind of, as the markets seem to be ascribing any news flow as bullish Bitcoin for one of the multiple narratives we have about it. So that's always fun if you're a Bitcoin holder. Yeah.
It is. I mean, to a point about the headlines of selection, I always kind of am watching myself and feeling what type of things, or the velocity of news. Today was definitely a slow day, to be honest.
Yeah.
It felt slower. But to your question about Bitcoin, like which of the narratives, if any, are compelling you the most at the moment? As you say, they kind of it seems to be quite malleable at the moment, where it can kind of fit any story we want to tell, and that seems to be how it's performing too. Is that how you're kind of seeing it at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of, I'd say I think there's reason to be a little bit worried about the debt in the U.S. It's something you've highlighted a lot, and I think it's pretty clear that a lot of that this administration isn't one that's especially good at fixing it, or just I feel like, I mean, the last Donald Trump administration was very high spending, and I think all signals are just that's kind of the natural mojo for this administration now, and that's very counter to what we hoped for. To what we hoped for 3 months ago, and certainly what the narrative was around him. And I think that's changing, and I think that's going to continue to change. So, the gold market is very clear about its worries around that, and I think Bitcoin is as well. And I think Bitcoin is, I was talking to a interesting conversation. I have a friend who's one of the more successful kind of, one of my college friends who's one of the more successful finance guys I know. He's a very senior guy at Millennium right now, and was very senior at a top tier investment bank for 16 years before going there. And he's never been a crypto guy. And I will say this also, I did verify when talking to him, whenever you see anyone post about how Millennium's buy or selling, ignore it, because Millennium only puts on arbitrage trades. They have zero, as a fund, they have zero directional view on Bitcoin as a broader fund. So that's a lot of garbage on the timeline. But but he was even talking about how for him personally that he and his wife were actually talking about buying Bitcoin for one of the first times because of concerns around kind of the role the U.S. wants to take in the global monetary system, and how if the dollar kind of it does not remain the cornerstone, that Bitcoin could be a good alternative. So again, irrelevant conversation, but just one more anecdote to the list of someone who I did not expect to be having that conversation with after 30 years of friendship, but probably 10 years where we've had different views on crypto.
You mentioned final thing on this, and then Ryan, want to come to you on give us the perspective of what's going on in Dubai. You mentioned the debt. My understanding was the House has put that through now, right? And there's a lot of people, well, I think ultimately the conclusion is that there's not a lot of people on either side of the aisle, despite a lot of talk coming from the Republican side that this is that, they've got a mandate to cut, to make specific cuts. I don't even think it's been the case that in the House, on the Republican side, that there's sufficient support for that kind of mandate. And so am I right in saying that this has moved towards the Senate now? And basically people have thought that, look, this is just going to go through as it is, and it's going to
I've seen rumblings. I mean, you have like Ron Johnson, who's the senator from Wisconsin, who's like a deficit hawk. I mean, you need to have three or four senators in the Republican Party reject it. And I think the one thing that the Republican Party is very clear on is don't fuck with Donald Trump. So it would be violating rule number one, and we saw in the House that people who I think have very real objections to this at the end passed it. And part of it's spending. The other thing is taxes. Taxes are like, it's revenue versus and cost are the two factors. And if you're cutting taxes, like that is, and I think one kind of rule of thumb for almost everybody, Democrat or Republican, but certainly the Republican Party, is don't raise taxes and don't get in the way of tax cuts. But it flies at very sharp odds with the idea that we want to cut the deficit, because that's the biggest source of income that we have. So I think the tax cut heavy thing is something that kind of passes the narrative test, but it's extremely bad for the deficit.
Yeah, and I think that those things combined is what is pushing a lot of people towards.
Even Scott Bessent went from talking about how, we're going to get rid of the terrible spending in this country. That was kind of the narrative that he pushed on the All In podcast, and he's kind of pushed for over a year. And the reason he got involved in this administration, to now saying we're going to grow our way out of it. So that's a huge shift
message back, right? Yeah.
And even how we're going to grow out of it. It's like tariffs aren't the way. Like it's hard to know. I mean, it's not impossible, but it certainly just feels like narrative slippage, I would say.
Narrative slippage. Yeah, I like it. Rahim, moving on from the state stuff, which I think is super important as it relates to the strength of Bitcoin right now, and actually gold as well, because as Stat said, that's doing super well. I think you picked up something on the Dubai news that I'd picked up on. What's going on here with XRP?
For sure. So Dubai Land Department, I actually had an elaborate conversation with a friend of mine who's actually planning to tokenize some property in Dubai. But essentially, so Dubai Land Department, so DLD, they basically have this initiative they launched a couple of weeks ago, which is called the Real Estate Evolution Space. And the whole idea is like they're focused on prop tech, which is property tech, and they're just like, okay, we need to like really focus on combining tech and AI with the evolution of like renting property, buying and selling. And one of their core focuses is also like making property buying accessible to all generations, whether it's like millennials, Gen Zs, etc., etc. So they obviously they launched their first government-backed real estate tokenization ecosystem. It's actually done in collaboration with a UK-based firm called Control Alt, who are providing like the blockchain infrastructure. And it's interesting because like the lowest amount you can actually invest in that ecosystem is 2,000 dirhams, which is about $550. And again, like their whole idea is to like tokenize more and more real estate. And Dubai has this plan. So Dubai, there was an article.
Dubai has a lot of real estate right now.
Dubai has a lot of real estate, and they have in their plan
make that more liquid.
Yeah, and like they have this plan. It's called the 2030 plan, where they kind of have like certain milestones there's a really cool article by Balaji once where he talks about how Dubai runs like a startup and stuff. But like part of that is that they want to basically by 2030 to 2033, they want to tokenize 7% of Dubai's real estate market, which amounts to a volume of about 16 billion US dollars. And that's like their whole plan and stuff. So they are like backed by like VARA, which is the Virtual Asset Regulatory Authority in Dubai, a couple of other government institutions, but like tokenizing like land. Obviously, we had like the whole Manto Demac thing, which obviously it's a whole different conversation. We've talked about this before, but there's like a big conversation happening in terms of like tokenizing like traditional assets in Dubai, especially because real estate has become like such a big hot topic in the city. So interesting to see of like the target demographic that they are targeting as well, because they mentioned Majida, who's their CEO, she mentioned that her goal is to make sure youngsters get exposure to this asset class as well. And the fact that your cheapest way to invest in it is like $550 is pretty awesome, I guess, in some ways.
Interesting. I guess the counter, it's not really a counter to that, but the thing that I'm always keeping my eye out for, having just come back from spending a lot of time in Dubai, is that there's just a lot of building going on at the moment. And I think when the market's got so hot, which apparently it has from being there, like the market's gone, I mean, you will know this better than me, right? Like it's got really, really hot in the last few years. Trying to maintain prices. I guess it's a wonderful opportunity to attract a different type of liquidity to kind of stick into the ecosystem, right?
Yeah, I agree. I was having this conversation yesterday with the dude who was telling me, and he was picking my brain on distribution and like, and we were just like talking. It's interesting about like who is this target audience where you're like, okay, guys, you only have to invest $550, and what is the ROI you're expecting on this? Is it like a 3x or 4x? Is that like life changing money? Very likely not. So we were just like talking about like the distribution angle of this is something I want to get educated on a lot. What is their focus and what is my friend's focus when he's essentially speaking to certain regulators. But yeah, Dubai in general, yes, like you mentioned, it's like a very ever-growing market on the real estate side of things. The thing is, like, because of Dubai's climate, a lot of people really like to live like close by within the city. That's always like a big proponent to it, just like New York or London for like different reasons and stuff. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting play. I don't know what the demographic is, but I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, I was just laughing because your guys' perspective of things being near or far is like completely out of whack with mine. I told you where I might have been staying, and you're like, "What? That's so far." I looked it up; it's like 20 minutes from you. It's just like not far.
Dude, anyone who moves to Abu Dhabi, which is an hour and 20 minutes away, it's like you shake hands and you're like, it was good knowing you. Like, we'll probably not see each other anymore.
I like it. Okay. Interesting stuff. So let's get into, I think we're only going to do two things before Wardaddy comes on. Ryan, you're going to tell us about Trump Media's headline, get a few thoughts on that, and like this continued involvement in Trump and the administration and the family in, the various crypto enterprises. And then we'll go to Legendary on the Hyperliquid stuff, actually, because that will be a nice segue into the conversation with Wardaddy. So Ryan, why don't you tell us what's going on with this plan from Trump Media Group?
So last week there was this article posted by like Financial Times where they cited like a bunch of sources saying that Trump Media and the technology group is essentially raising $3 billion to invest in crypto and other ecosystems. This isn't like very far off from what they've been like focused on and doing. There was a circular passed by a couple of weeks ago which talked about launching a utility token. They've talked about Made in America ETFs. They obviously launched TruthFi, which was back in Jan, where they raised about like $700 million. Out of that, they've invested like $250 million in a bunch of like ETFs, a bunch of other cryptocurrencies, and just like on like different asset groups in that vertical. So again, like this article was going around saying that they're raising another $3 billion from share sales, and they will invest in the entire ecosystem. That's where Trump Media came out saying, and I quote, apparently the Financial Times has dumb writers listening to even dumb sources. So they denied that this is not something that they are focused on, which is just interesting because it's not very far off from what they've been focused on and what they have been doing all this time. We obviously know Trump has his like own meme coin. There's like a stablecoin ecosystem they've launched. He has NFTs. He has ordinals. I have this hot take I've given on the modern market before, that I wouldn't be surprised if tomorrow they come out and being like, we're launching the Make America Great Again chain, or like a Trump chain or something and stuff. So it just feels like it's not very far off from what they have planned. But yeah, it's just like rather interesting. I think it just brings into question again the authenticity of a media in general, on how often we have like so much news that comes out of our ecosystem, where like it ends up moving markets in positive and negatives. We had this around the tariffs situation. We obviously had it around the Ethereum ETFs. So there's a conversation to be had on that. However, I don't think it's very far off from what they've done. And I wouldn't be surprised weeks later they're like, oh, it wasn't 3 billion, it was actually 5 billion. And then they're like, oops, we just changed our minds. So yeah.
Okay. Thanks for the summary. Really helpful summary. And do you know, I kind of like the take, to be honest. It definitely doesn't sound like a crazy idea to me. Stats, what are your thoughts here? Like, as I said, it's like it doesn't sound like an entirely out of the blue potential enterprise for them. Do you have any view here?
Not really. I mean, in the scheme of things, this one didn't strike me as like, I think that there's a lot of stuff that happens where you can see real potentials for corruption. This one, it kind of didn't really strike me as that in the scheme of things, like raising money, plowing it into Bitcoin. I mean, in the scheme of things, I was surprised that this was, I had someone ping me about it and call it a grift. I saw Tyler was like, Dems are going to be pissed about this one. I'm not, it seems relatively speaking like not as big a deal, but you know, because we're already very used to the family having like very visible business enterprises, and unless you're taking the view that like the president's family shouldn't have private business enterprises, I don't really see the big issue with this one. So I don't know why he's denying it at the same point with such ferocity, with such energy, other than maybe it's just simply not true. I don't know.
Fair enough. Ledge, any take here? Or do you want to move it into Hyperliquid?
Not really. I'm happy to move it into the Hyperliquid news.
Yes, please.
Which is to do with James Wynn, this huge trader who got a lot of traction over the last week by basically opening up enormous long positions, short positions that at some point also had exceeded $1 billion. And throughout the course of James Wynn trading, at one point he was up, I think more than 80 million. That was also down multiple 8 figures in the meantime, and now has, as of 3 hours ago, made the post where he said the swings have been insane. He is still up 13 point something mil, but as for now, he is taking a break from the leverage trades. And I think the more interesting stuff than the actual numbers and the actual trades that have been going on is, well, A, all of that happening on Hyperliquid, B, the possibility to even have a $1 billion long or short on Hyperliquid, and obviously the enormous amount of marketing that those posts and everyone talking about those longs and shorts have caused, because ultimately everything that James Wynn has been posting has reached multiple hundreds of thousands of views. About the trader himself, there is not a lot of information on him. It's been around for a couple of years. Very famously bought Pepe in 2022 when it was at, I don't know, like a couple mil, I think. No, initially it was a 600K when he bought it, and then it did go up quite quickly to 4.2M. That was probably one of his most prominent trades. But apart from that, there's not too much that we know about him other than the meme trading history. But again, I don't think that is the relevant part. The relevant part, in my opinion, is how massive this free marketing essentially is for Hyperliquid, that this guy has been going on a 10-figure position streak over the last 7-8 days.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I think people are getting like invested in the storyline a little bit, thinking that he's going to lose it all and getting involved in that. I agree with you. Zooming out, I think it's clear, humongous activity and marketing for Hyperliquid. Not saying that that's like the team involved in any way. It's just, it's great exposure for Hyperliquid. Rahim, you've been using Hyperliquid a lot, I think, with some leverage, with leverage too. Has your, now that Hyperliquid's kind of appreciated significantly in this period of time, Are you just full on just continuing to do what you're doing there? What's keeping you there? How's your kind of evolution happening on Hyperliquid?
Yeah, I've been like still playing around with like different ecosystems, different tokens and stuff. We've talked about like how the whole volume game, the whole making fees business model is probably one of the best ones. You had actually in your snapshot, if I'm not mistaken, the Axiom bot, which made like $100 million in like revenue and stuff. Again, it's crazy to think like a bot is making like that revenue and stuff. So I think ecosystems like this like make more and more sense. His like long brings like that conversation that you actually brought up when we were talking about leverage trading, is that you have exchanges trying to liquidate you and you have like these big players trying to liquidate you. So I think that's always like a question and an interesting ecosystem to kind of look at. But otherwise, like, it's been a fun ecosystem to kind of get educated on.
Ledge, yeah, I take your point. The public trading thing, as a general question, Ledge, what's your take on the public trading versus private? I saw this clip from Gainsey saying like, guys, just if you want to take the positions, if you want to gamble it, fine, gamble it. Well, probably just don't gamble it. Like just literally just walk away. You've still got a lot of money. But if you're going to do it, at least do it privately. Take it in-house so that people don't see it in this way. Do you have a view there? I mean, obviously we're not playing in any type of size in the same bracket here, but like public versus private, what do you think?
I mean, it really depends on what you do, right? If you obviously there's the meme coin bracket to that, where you trade your low market cap meme coins and you want to lure your followers into copy trading you to be able to dump on them. In terms of like those like super large positions, I feel like once it gets to a certain size, it doesn't matter. Even if James Wynn were to not post about that, people would obviously look on the Hyperliquid Explorer and they would see those large positions, and you have the whale alert sites and all those sites who also in the past have reported on large movements and positions. So in that case, when it's on chain, I don't see it making a massive difference. It's probably different if you trade on Binance, on other perps platform where it's not as transparent. But in that case, it's a public position either way. So if you do that and you have an X account and you want to, throw some fuel onto it, why not post about that? It doesn't really make a difference in my opinion.
Fair enough. That's fair. Final question before we roll into the conversation with Wardaddy. Delighted to say he'll be joining us in a second to talk all things Hyperliquid, all things Kinetic, probably going to be one of the more significant protocols building on Hyperliquid. Stats, final take here. Hyperliquid situation. I think in the last 7 days since we last spoke, it's gone up a lot. It's up 40% since then. A lot of conversations versus like Hyperliquid versus Solana. Is that the thing it's aiming for? Is it aiming for BNB? How are you just observing the whole Hyperliquid ecosystem, its growth, its price appreciation? What are your thoughts?
I'm gonna wait for Wardaddy because every time I say an opinion on there, he throws water at it. I think my gut instinct is that it feels more like a Binance than a Solana. I know it's had a few meme coins that are hype native or whatever, but at the end of the day, it feels much more like trying to compete with Binance. It feels like it's doing that effectively. It's just the exchange people go to, long and short stuff. I feel like that seems like very much its core use case. Now, Wardaddy's going to come call me a boomer and say I'm not aware of all the things that are happening in the background. We're going to make it take over, Google and Facebook too. But look forward to hearing that. Fucking Wardaddy.
Perfect setup.
Yeah.
Perfect setup.
Way to welcome it.
Exactly.
So as you said, if we're unable to answer the question ourselves, let's bring Wardaddy to the stage. As I said, delighted to have Wardaddy with us today. If you don't know him, he is the research analyst and in charge of strategy at Kinetic, building on Hyperliquid. Absolutely nailed the crossover from Blast to Hyperliquid, caught a lot of fire in that transition as he's kind of on his content creator journey, moving into still creating a lot of content, but also building now a lot more on Hyperliquid. Wardaddy, great to see you, man. How you doing?
GM stats, bro. I miss talking to you every day. Jesus Christ. Good to see you guys.
Dude, you had to wear the Tottenham shirt. It's just so soon after. So soon.
I've been reeling, dude. It's been a lot of fun. So
have you even taken it off since you won on Wednesday?
No. Why would I do that? So yeah, it's been fun, dude. I'm in Barcelona right now. I'm sorry, this setup is like kind of crazy. We're moving
you're
my
good.
girlfriend out, so
good.
we're heading back to the US finally. It's been quite a few years abroad, so heading back home.
Good stuff, man. Well, let's talk Hyperliquid. We obviously set up the question, set up beautifully here to answer like what's the state of Hyperliquid? What's your general take on it? Obviously, talked a little bit about the general market too. Is Hyperliquid going to take over Apple and Amazon, as Stats said, or do you have a different take?
Of course, bro. We're coming for Google. Nah, dude. Like I think at the end of the day, this is the first ecosystem that for like this new class of like meme coin NFT folks that we're getting to see build from the ground up, right? Like I think that that's really exciting. That's something that a lot of people can take heart in, and I think the big thing here is talking about like the lack of VC capital that is backing this. Like this is yeah, like it really feels like you have like the ground level here that you're getting in on, and you're getting to talk to the builders, and obviously seeing, oh, sorry, I got a bunch of notifications coming in. But seeing the opportunity to talk to the builders and be around the folks and get to chat with all these DeFi protocols and stuff like that. It's a lot of fun.
You mentioned the no VC angle. Just want to take you back to like, there was a point in time, I think it must have been last year at some point, you were like all in on Blast, all participating in that ecosystem a lot. What was the thing that made you know to switch? Because I remember specifically, and I think you might have even reshared the tweet later, like
a few times.
when you shared the tweet of your decision to change from Blast to Hyperliquid, I think the initial reaction was like you'd led a lot of people into Blast, and those people were for some reason annoyed because they're kind of following you as like a KOL style person, but you wanted to go somewhere else. So what was the thinking there, and what made you make the switch?
Make the pivot. Yeah, dude. So like let's go back to that time, right? Like again, getting to see the ground up build, right? Like we were all there, we all had the same opportunities, we were getting involved in the same protocols, we were all farming with the same capital and stuff like that. And that was really exciting. Like Blast Gold was obviously a big thing, and everywhere you looked on CT, like everybody was talking about it. It was like the one thing that everybody was like excited about. And like you had content creators from myself to Jen to y'all to Stats to freaking Clemente, like everybody was talking about it, and it was a lot of fun. And I think when I noticed that the tokenomics I didn't agree with, right? There was such a fat chunk going to VCs that got in way before any of us did. And we were the ones that kind of had built it up, right? Like how it just kind of felt like a slap in the face. And then on top of that, a lot of the big holders that had locks, like their Blast Gold got locked, right? Because like they had a vest and everything like that. It was unlocking on the same schedule as some of the big VCs. And so that was just one of the questions I had. It was like, dude, this feels like I'm about to get dumped on. And so as I was sitting there trying to understand kind of the flywheel here, right? It was like, okay, we got excited. We brought a lot of people in. We brought capital in. And the VCs are here sitting here funding it. They're getting in below us. And then we're locked as well. And then we're going to get dumped on at the same time as VCs unlocking. It was just kind of a weird thing. And on top of that, like, I think it also showed how big, like, I know we had all drawn comparisons with Blast to Arbitrum and Optimism and stuff like that. It was like, oh, it's an ETH too, yada, yada. But there wasn't any institutional draw to this. And institutions didn't care about Blast. It was CT caring about Blast. And it was just one of those realization moments for myself where I was just like, we really are small fish. Like, we're not moving this market. Like there are people with tens of hundreds of millions of dollars that are not interested in this. So why are we interested in this? And
you saw that in Hyperliquid then when you
when they were self-funded and they had done the right things with the community at that point, I was like, okay, this seems like a good bet. And obviously I had no idea it was going to play out the way that it did, or else I would have been way more insufferable on the timeline. But
nice.
I think the big issue was your card holders, though, right? Like it was more the
Oh.
card holders than like people were like, oh, than just normal followers.
Yeah, well, that and like going back to reading those tweets and stuff like that and reading the comments, I think a lot of it came down to like farmers getting farmed and people like, oh, you're going to extract because if you're a big KOL, then that means you have money, and then if you have money, then you're going to put that money to use in the rich get richer kind of thing, which I didn't necessarily agree with. And yeah, I think there was one comment, I don't remember who said it, but it was like moving to extract more from the next ecosystem or something like that. And I was like, this is kind of ridiculous. But it was just kind of that era where it felt so PvP. And then we just went to greener pastures. As for like fantasy card holders, yeah, like that definitely. I think that's just like a whole nother tangent, right? Because I think like SocialFi and stuff like that, like when people are getting to buy stock and like who you are as a person or how much you're posting or whatever the case is, I think is just kind of crazy. But
how soon after did you then move into like the decision to build? Because yes, for a long period of time you were like trading, farming, content. What made you, what did you see that was going on then, and maybe even now, that made you decide like, right, I want to start building with Kineetiq?
Yeah, so just to give you guys kind of insight there, so I think that move happened in May, right around end of May, where I made the pivot from Blast to Hyperliquid. And then I was like sitting there messing with it, and I threw a little bit of money in, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna see how this works. And like obviously like the on-chain order book and stuff like that, you had to learn that. There's spots and perp and stuff like that. Like I don't really mess with perps, so I'm just like a spot trader. I had my perps career back in the day, got wrecked on BitMEX, and I was like, I'm not going to touch that again. But like trading spot was very interesting. And then as I was getting the hang of it, I was like, okay, I'm not putting that much money in. I think originally I put in like $10,000, right? So I have 10K in and I'm messing with that. And I'm like, wow, I'm actually climbing up the leaderboard a decent amount here. And I was like, this is interesting. So you're telling me there's no VCs and 10K is actually making a difference. And then you start seeing like the little inklings on crypto Twitter where people are talking about it, like, this and that. And it just felt so niche. And then whenever I would share it with Blast people, they're like, I don't give a fuck about your illiquid shitcoins. And I was like, all right, fuck you guys then. So then 10K, like 3X. And I was like, okay, maybe I should put a little bit more money in, and then like I just started climbing up the leaderboard. And like I said earlier, like getting to talk to some of these protocols and seeing who was building and who wasn't building, and like it was just such a nascent ecosystem, and Hyper EVM wasn't ready. Like Hyper EVM didn't exist yet. So like it was just a thought. And then that was really exciting to me, right? Like to be able to think, okay, at this point it's green pastures. Like there's nobody here. There's nobody home. Like we could do whatever the fuck we want. And so I was part of a group that was like, we were doing daily calls, right? And so this is now the Kinetic team. We were doing daily calls. We were sharing alpha. We were like, okay, this worked, this didn't work. And there is another Discord that we were in that was sharing like points reports. So points would drop and then everybody would like say what they did that week. This is how much volume we did. This is what we bought. This is what we held. This is that. This is this. And they would share their points. And so we were in this chat where we were doing this every day. And it was just like, dude, this is, we have edge here. Like this is something that we're pretty confident in. And I think one day it was towards the beginning of September. So we'd been farming for like 3 or 4 months, and then we had known all the builders, and we were like looking around, we're like, this is kind of a ghost town still. So like we have all had like previous experience building different protocols and stuff. So we were just like, yo, what if we actually build some shit here? Like, I think this is like, we've been looking for something to do. We have the means, we have the talent. Let's kind of plant our flag here. And then Omnia just fucking ran with it, dog. He was from September on, he was he was locked in. So it's been a lot of fun. I think from September to like from that initial conversation to like within 30 days, like everything was set in motion.
Was there anything that gave you confidence from the team side? Like, I appreciate it. Sounds like as you say, like a really nascent ecosystem where there's like kind of looking around being like, is anyone else going to do this, or should we just do it? But like, what gave you the confidence maybe from the team side, or just from that perspective, or maybe in the conversations with people? Like, who had you met in the ecosystem that gave you the confidence to be like, no, this is the right group of people that we want to build for and with?
Yeah, well, I would just go back to like that time, right? Like we had I don't want to say it like this, but like Pac-Man kind of didn't really take the leadership role that we were looking for. And then the Hyperliquid team had shown no favoritism, like at all. Like you could reach out to the team and like you might have a conversation with Julian, but like you're not going to be talking with anybody from the team outside of that. And I really liked that because it didn't feel like there was any behind the door deals going on. There are no sweetheart deals. It was just like, this is just what it is. And if you want to use it, use it. And then looking at the people that were really deep in the ecosystem at that point, you had Jez, you had Max, Guthix, obviously Omnia. Like these Shoku, and like these are guys that I had looked up to, and they were equally as deep, or if not deeper. And then you obviously have Steven, Young Capital. Like you're seeing these people that are like really, really deep in the ecosystem. You're like, it felt like an echo chamber. And I remember having that conversation early on with Omnia, where I was like, this is an anecdotal story, but I promise it kind of comes together. Back in the day, so I've been here since 2017, right? So I've been very deep in crypto. I've played the game. I've seen the ecosystems. I've seen the cycles. And I remember when Solana had first kind of come onto the scene, okay? And I see Solana, and I think it was Alex Weiss that was just like bull posting the fuck out of it. Solana. And I was just like, fuck, dude, like this guy has been right a lot, right? He's been right a lot. And I'm like, okay. But I felt like it was too consensus. Now, Solana was at fucking $3. And I was like, Solana's consensus. Okay. So what did I do? I went to FTM. Okay. And that was my like, I'm going to be anti-consensus. This is too big. Solana was at $3. Okay. And I sat there and I watched Solana fucking rip tits. And I was like, what did I just do? Like, what did I just do? And it was in that moment where I was like, okay, like I have to make the decision. I still did well in FTM, but I did not do Solana well. And this cycle, I was just like, okay, there's a Ricky XBT tweet that was like, the real superpower in crypto is knowing the difference between being early and still being early. Like you think that something's up and you're like, oh fuck, I'm out. This is like, this is consensus. Like everybody knows what, like I'm the top. And then just keep going. And you're like, fuck, I'm still the top. And then you sit there and you keep like talking yourself out of it. And that's what we're seeing on the timeline right now, right? Like I just quote retweeted Art Chick, who was like, oh yeah, like this is a consensus trade. Everybody's talking about it. It has so much mind share. And I was like, dude, it has 113,000 fucking holders. Like we're talking like 113,000 holders. Like we're tiny in the grand scheme of things, right? So I don't know. I'm trying to give you guys some texture here as to like what the early days were like and kind of what the vision is, but it's a fun time.
Yeah, it's a really interesting comparison to Solana because like as you know, I've been around much less than you. So I came into the space in 2021. But when I was just looking at Hyperliquid in general, and again, like, look, these are different products. And I want to ask you for your view on that comparison in a second. But like, they are different. But just looking at the feel of the community, the type of passion that the community on both sides had when the price was low, the kind of conviction that they had, even if you look at some of the price action, where it's like, okay, something went up, then it came back down, and then it's kind of hovering for a bit, and it's like ready to go up again. I felt like there's a lot of parallels, even if it's not the same.
Yeah.
But I'd be curious to ask two things. One, how far do you extend that comparison with Solana? Do you think Hyperliquid is gunning for Solana? And then if it isn't, what is the investment thesis now that people have already seen it go like the mini? I mean, what's it done? It went from $9 to 38 now. So it's done a 4x already. You know, what's the investment thesis now? Where's it going? What do you think?
Yeah. So I think at this point it's too early to tell. Like I think these comparisons, like we're trying to find comparisons because that's what we do. We're like, okay, well, this is that, right? Like I don't necessarily know if we can find a comparison here. I think if we do, it's somewhere. I don't even want to say in between. I think it's something of both, right? Like Solana and BNB. Like, I think if you go back to the early days, like Binance Smart Chain and all the shitters that were on there going freaking thousands of X's, like that has like some like hyper EVM-ness there. But then you also have like this cult-like community here where like we have, it's just tiny, bro. Like I have all these charts I wish I could pull up right now, but like we're talking daily addresses, right? 18,000. That was an all-time high. It was stuck at like 3,000 to 4,000 for weeks. Right? Nobody was using it. So we're talking 3,000 to 4,000. We've gone to 18,000. 18,000 people. Like, dude, 18,000 people are sniping soul shitters right now. So it's just like, okay, like it's just different in terms of that. And then on the other side of the business, you have the perps and the spot tokens. And we've talked about unit and using those majors as collateral, I think is something that's really interesting to me. And that's something that I've been doing personally, is like, I have told myself since the beginning of the cycle, I'm like, look, I want to use my Bitcoin, and any profits I take, I'm taking back into Bitcoin, right? Like anything I make goes back into Bitcoin. And so being able to use that Bitcoin as collateral on Hyper EVM has been like just a total aha moment for me, where I was just like, holy shit, like this is actually really cool, right? Like going into Felix, having my Bitcoin, taking a loan out on that Bitcoin at freaking 40, 50% LTV, nothing too risky, and then deploying that into the funding rate arbitrages that we're seeing on Hyperliquid, or deploying that into the vaults, or whatever else you want to do on Hyper EVM, I think is making DeFi more accessible. And it's kind of democratizing that, right? It's not saying like you have to hold hype, you have to hold this, you have to hold that. It's like you can hold whatever major you want and still take advantage of Hyper EVM, which I think is really interesting.
That is pretty cool insights already. And Isabel, a couple of hours ago, had a post looking into the points farming and saying that many of the guides are probably well-intentioned but misguiding, as Jeff will most likely focus on the things that actually benefit Hyperliquid's core business. Is mentioned obviously also Kinetic as a part of that, everything to do with Hyperunit. You've mentioned a couple protocols with Felix and others already. If you had to name 2-3 protocols that you think are really interesting or standing out to you, not necessarily from a like points farming or whatever perspective, just the things you actually like, which 2 to 3 protocols would those be on the Hyper EVM side of things?
Yeah. So I saw that tweet, and I totally agree. Like, I think that I think I commented the same thing. I was just like, dude, this is this influx of wallets over the past couple of weeks has been like a lot of soul people coming in and being like, okay, like we're running back the same playbooks. And I'm getting pinged from like ETH and Soul Maxis and being like, yo, I heard about this and that. I'm like, dude, get the fuck out of my DMs. Like, I don't care about your little shit tokens. Like, I really don't care, right? Like, I think that there are going to be shitters that run. It is what it is. Like, you can't stop the degens from degenning. But I think my perspective on this has been like, look, I want to take the capital that I have and deploy it into things that I think the team are going to incentivize. So similar to that Jez post, like, I don't think aping shitters and then taking the profits that you make from the said shitters and putting it into an LP is going to net you very much. Like, why? Because like you're using people as exit liquidity, and you're like, oh, like I'm doing a good job. Like, I don't think that that's necessarily the direction that we need to take this. But there are ways that, like, obviously we're still waiting for pre-compiles to go live. So basically that is the connection point between Hyper EVM and Hypercore. Hypercore is like the perps and spot platform that everybody uses that is like Hyperliquid. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, you started speeding up when talking about pre-compiles. I was going to say slow it down for a second, because pre-compiles is really, really cool. I definitely didn't understand it fully beforehand. So just slow it down from the pre-compiles rather than speed up, because I think people would definitely want to know about that.
Yeah. So basically, I'm going to try to keep this as like layman terms as I can.
Slow it down, but layman.
So like you have Hypercore, which is like the Hyperliquid platform, and then you have Hyper EVM, right? And so like people think of these as two different ecosystems. And as of right now, they kind of are. You can transfer in between the two. But in terms of like running yield strategies or anything like that, there is no connection point between these two, right? So that's kind of what pre-compiles is like it's connecting these two ecosystems and then allowing like your deployed capital on Hyper EVM to cross back over to Hypercore and take advantage of Hypercore mechanics and stuff. So that unlock right there is going to be like a key instrumental Lego piece that is going to unlock the ecosystem. So as of right now, I think we're at like 1.3 billion TVL. I expect that to go much higher, just because there are a lot of people that have a lot of collateral that want to take loans on that collateral and put that collateral to use, but they can't yet. So, and that's with pre-compiles going live, and obviously Kinetic is a big piece of that. And in terms of like, I guess the best way to talk about this right now would be like my own farming strategy. And this is just like the way that I think the team is going to reward this is like using things that are instrumental to Hyperliquid, right? So like we know that spot majors is a big part of that. So spot majors is hyper unit. So right now you have unit Sol, unit ETH, unit Bitcoin, and unit Farcoin. We expect to see that expand over time, but as of right now, it's just those 4. So then you can transfer in those 4. So say you're a Sol shitcoiner and you want to use your Sol as collateral to take a loan out on, and then taking a loan from Sol to USD, whether that's Tether or USDE, and then putting that to work in Hyper EVM. You can do that whenever that goes live, right? And then taking that and feeding that into Liminal, which is my favorite farm right now. The mint cap is maxed out. It's at 5 million right now. So we don't know when that is going to expand, but when that does expand, I expect it to max out again. And basically what that does is it does delta neutral farming, right? So it buys the spot token. So let's say we're running, I know I'm getting like fucking super techie, but I'm like trying to keep this as like fucking basic as I can. But delta neutral is it buys the spot token and then it shorts the perp token, right? And then there's a funding rate that Hyperliquid is paying traders, and then you take that neutral, like you take that profit right there. And so it's not a lot
of that for you. It does
Liminal does that for you
rather than you having to do that yourself.
Exactly. And so like by doing that, I am using unit assets. So I'm using UBTC. I'm taking a loan out on UBTC on Felix vanilla markets. So I'm taking that BTC, taking a loan out on that BTC and getting USDT. I transfer the USDT to Hypercore. I change it for USDC, and then I ship it over to Liminal, and then Liminal runs like this funding rate arbitrage yield strategy. That's really interesting. Now, at this point, you're seeing anywhere from 8% on Bitcoin to like 30% on Farcoin. That's not bad, right? Like it's capital that I am locking away into Bitcoin anyway, so I'm just making money on my Bitcoin. So that's pretty cool for me. And I think that shows kind of the provenance of Hyperliquid, what they're trying to build and what they're scaling out. I think it's really interesting.
I think you want to go for it?
No, go for it.
Gotcha. I think we did speak a lot about like the opportunities and, you know, all the good things. Obviously, we have to ask the critical question as well. A, what is the bear case basically? And B, that's pointing out Overarch's comment in the YouTube comments. Overarch is saying, you know, we need to be honest that hyper EVM dApps are likely to be farmed the same as Blast, individually TGE with the next hype distro, and then leave. What would your response to that?
I totally agree. And so I think that this is something that at this point you have Hyperliquid making anywhere from $2.5 to $5 million a day. And then they're taking 97% of that revenue and then buying more hype, right? Like you have like a natural flow that the business is saying like, okay, we're going to keep betting on ourselves and we're going to keep buying hype. At this point, people keep saying like win point season. I don't fucking care. I really don't. Like the longer that we go without point season, I'm happy. Like I don't think, because just for that reason, right? Like if people don't see the vision and then they want to get a tweet from Jeff to say point season, to then go in and like be mercenary capital, stay away. Like go ahead, go do your thing. And that's fine by me, right? Like we're seeing so much volume come in. I think we have 8 billion in open interest right now. That topped out at 10.1, obviously with the James Wynn stuff going on. So 10.1 bill in open interest. We're coming towards like centralized exchange at open interest. Volume is coming up. Dude. But it's pretty interesting. But in terms of like cracks in the armor, I think that we see this in sports, right? Like if a team is undefeated, they have to show up to every game. right? Like people are going to be looking at them and they're going to be like, I'm going to take down that motherfucker. Oh, that guy right there, I want to come at him. So like, I think that there is an opportunity that something cracks. Like we saw with HLP, right? Like HLP had a slip up, and the entire time I was like, Hyperliquid sucks. This is what's going on. I'm like, dude, come on. But so I think like these tiny little negative things that can happen. And imagine if there's a hack of like in the blast days we saw, what was the fucking hack? It was like some
Munchables.
Yeah. So like imagine a Munchables hack and then Jeff having to hop into action on something like that. Like I think a lot of people are going to be like, see, we knew it. Like there no validators. And you're like, dude, whatever, man. So I think that there is a very real world where something like that can happen. But this is where you have to take it upon yourself and just like do your own due diligence and say like, it's growing and it's growing very fast.
There's risks in all the things we do. Just helpful to articulate some of them and be aware of them. And then, as you say, like analyze them and measure them versus the potential upside. Two things. One, to your point about Unit being super important, this tweet from Shoku was just 15 hours ago saying Unit is the heart of the hype EVM. And I think you can really see that happening. I've been speaking about Unit a lot. Me and you've been chatting about it behind the scenes a lot as well. These specific assets and the Unit being the protocol, which is earning money as these assets are being traded and being brought over, is clearly going to be a very important protocol built on top of Hyperliquid, and maybe made more significant by the comments from Jeff in the recent interview where they said, like, look, we're only a 10-person team. You know, we want other very significant protocols to be built on top of Hyperliquid. We can't do it all ourselves. And for whatever reason, maybe a lot of, you know, the person, the background, the ability, the Unit team seem to, whether it's being entrusted, I know it's kind of permissionless, and my understanding is anyone can technically do this. They're obviously the leader here and the people that are being trusted to do that. So it's definitely something to keep an eye on. So I'm glad you spoke to that in a bit more detail. Moving on to your side though, and I'm conscious of time, probably have like 5 or so minutes left. Definitely want to give you a chance to tell us about Kineetiq and why you wanted to help build that. It's liquid staking on Hyperliquid. But what's going on there? When can we expect it? I know you've been waiting for a while, but first, like, what is it? Why is it important? And what inspired you to do it?
Yeah, so basically liquid staking for the folks that are in the Solana ecosystem, think of this as like Cheeto Soul on Hyperliquid. I think that's kind of the best way to keep it simple, right? Liquid staking, when liquid staking happens, so right now if you stake, are you any of you guys natively staked Hyperliquid right now? So like when you natively stake, you stake, and that's like going to the validators, and to unlock that it takes 7 days, right? And so that 7-day wiggle room, like with like Tia, right, like Celestia back in the day, that was a 30-day unlock, which that takes a long time. So like people don't really want to stake, and then you have to incentivize that stake. So that's where the APR comes from. So that's 2% right now on Hyperliquid. That's not that appetizing, but when you can trade in and out of it freely and still get the yield, that is what liquid staking is. And then putting that to use in the DeFi ecosystems and using that as collateral and stuff like that. So that's going to be a big unlock for the ecosystem. We're really excited about that. As of right now, like we said earlier, we're waiting for pre-compiles. Can't really do much until that goes live, but we're excited.
That's exciting, man. And just explain to people, you need the pre-compiles because you need to access that liquidity, right? So that you can put that hype to work.
So that we can delegate to validators. So the validators are on Hypercore. People are giving us hype on EVM or wherever, and then we're delegating that for them. We're doing that through a process called Stake Hub. So basically the validators, it's like completely decentralized. The validators are going to be ranked on a score, their uptime, their metrics, whatever the case may be. And then we are going to automatically give yield or give hype to those validators. And yeah, we need this stuff to go live, but until then we're just kind of sitting here, just kind of degenning, bull posting, and doing the thing with everybody else. So watching
the price go up, it's not a terrible thing to do while you're waiting,
I know there was a I think it was a tweet from Serp, the founder of Ethos, and he was like, I forgot to unstake my hype, and that was like a week ago, and then it just absolutely boomed. So buzzing for the boys, man.
A good time to forget about some hype. Legendary found a wallet with some hype in it the other day that he'd forgotten about. It was very pleasant.
There we go.
Very pleasant surprise. Look, we're coming to the end, man. Maybe just a final personal question. Like you're doing the content stuff and the trading stuff first. On a personal point of view, how's it felt like making this transition to be more on the building side? And how are you feeling as the ecosystem is also catching fire?
Yeah, like dude, the problem with creating content all the time is that you have to you feel like this pressure to like put shit out and all that kind of stuff, and it's just really annoying. Like there's so many people that are just like coming at you and they're like, yeah, like if you say one thing, then people quote retweet you from freaking 6 months ago. It's just like a constant game, and you're like trying to keep people entertained. And I think on the builder side, it's more chill. Like you're like, obviously you're going all the time, trying to figure things out and problem solve and stuff like that. But I'd much rather problem solve like protocol level stuff than problem solve how to keep attention from some degen that hasn't seen the sun in 4 days. So I think that's the biggest difference.
I like it. Look, it's been an awesome conversation, man. Really appreciate you joining us. Is there anything else we've missed out that you think would be helpful for people to know as they try to either get onboarded to Hyperliquid or navigate Hyperliquid further?
Yeah, man. I guess end of the day, I would just say take your time to kind of get into the weeds and think for yourself. Like I think that this is one of the biggest problems with the InfoFi craze that we're in right now is there's like a lot of regurgitated content and a lot of AI content and stuff that like it's not getting to the heart of what is going on, and really learning to navigate that and value things with your own brain, right? You're like, okay, like this, I think this is valuable for X, Y, and Z reason, even if you're wrong. Like it's okay to be wrong. Like we've all been wrong. Like it's part of the learning game. So yeah, like find some people that you trust, curate your timeline, and be able to ask the questions. And if you guys need any help or anything like that, I'm always open. Like I'll continue to share any alpha that I can and go from there.
Love it, man. Thanks so much for the people who are watching in on screen. We've got Wardaddy's details. You can follow him at Wardaddy Capital. Also follow Kineetiq for what they're doing at KINETIQ_XYZ. We are awaiting you to go live so we can put some of our hype to work.
Let's go.
So,
thanks, guys.
That was joining us, man. It's been great to have you with us. Guys, just as a reminder, we do this every single day, Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. Eastern time for 1 hour, doing more of these conversations. We want to host the best and most interesting, most relevant conversations in crypto, at least a few times a week. Not every single day, but as many times as we can. I hope you enjoyed today's show, already getting some feedback that you did in the YouTube comments. So we'll do more of those. Thanks so much for joining us. As always, we'll be back again with you tomorrow. Take care and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.